Hey guys, how's it going? This is Marco, and today I would like to talk a little bit about this piece that I did that I completed a few months back called Dawn Ceremony. I don't have the full recording of what I did, step by step, but I decided to go back and open the PSD and have a look at all the layers and maybe talk about them, talk about what I did. And so let's see, hopefully there's something interesting for you there. So the beginning is, as usual, reference something that you see on TV, or you play in a video game, or a photo you take. Well, not in this case, but I take a lot of photographs, so sometimes ideas come from those pictures. But in this case, I remember it was movies that I saw, and this Kitbash kit that the guys from Kitbash 3D came out with, and which is called Egypt, obviously. And there were some pretty interesting assets. So I remember that I had started the piece already, and I got to a point in which I was completely stuck. I didn't know how to go on. I lost the interest in the image, and then when this kit came out, I decided that I could use this interesting models and I could enrich the scene, and I finished the piece. So again, sometimes it happens that you start with a great idea, what you think is a great idea, and most of the time it isn't, and then you abandon it, which is pretty normal. I have a lot of stuff I abandoned, and maybe a lot of other stuff that I probably should have abandoned. But in any case, in this situation, I came to a stop, and but then I found again the will to make something out of it. So the first step that I went through for this image is I like to go and I could use a program called View, which I'm sure you know, and I like this program because it's a good program for me to start creating the mood and testing lighting on 3D models. And sometimes I also create the HDR that I might eventually use, for example, in Maya and Arnold, which is my main 3D kit. And it depends. Sometimes I render directly from View, and then I go to Photoshop and I paint on top of the models, but with already a lighting set, an idea about the lighting, a mood already set. Some other times I play around with in View, and then I export the HDR for another program. I'm sorry, like I was saying before. And so in this case, I started with these models, and the models that you see here were downloaded, and they're free models that I very, very low res that I found online. Because when I have an idea, even for client work, I always try to see if there is something free available that could be a good starting point for me. They don't have to be, also because they're free, so it's difficult that you find free models that are high res, but they don't have to be super high res. They could be just the beginning of something. Also because eventually with the paint over, maybe you would cover most of it, or you would just use part of it. No matter what, I like, because I tend to create my concept in 3D, and so having a good library of assets is always useful. So sometimes, depending on the project I try to look for something specifically, and then I download and put it in my library, so that eventually, even in the future, if I need something like that, I already have it, and it's like picking up all the ingredients for something. Then, of course, for something more advanced, for example, I was mentioning the Kitbash kit from the guys at Kitbash 3D, and that's something, those models, those assets are something definitely more advanced that you can use in production. So, but it always depends. We have the lack of being able to go back eventually to Photoshop and mix everything we want, basically. And so, there are certain models that are more advanced, and you have to do eventually less in 2D. There are other models that will definitely need more work, but eventually the goal is always to make it look like it's part of the same world, let's say. So in this case, I took these low-res models, and I started experimenting with the lighting. As I was saying before, I wanted to create this mood, a specific mood of dawn, a little bit of fog, a little bit of mystery, because there is this ceremony that it's held at at dawn, and it's pretty early, it's pretty moody, and so there is this contrast between the night, the darkness of the night, and this blues, and then instead the oranges of the ceremony and everything that is happening in this in front of this temple, in front and inside of this temple. So I wanted to play with these two elements. So first step is like I was saying, view. Then in this case I seem to remember that I exported the HDR and I went to Maya, and in Maya I import the model, and then like I was saying I enrich the scene. Let's have a look at what I have here. This is the model that I had before, and then outside the lighting I have this other model. I took this Cubebrush and tried to create this set extension. So main focus, main idea, main story is happening here, but then in the background I wanted to create something. I wanted to fill this area. I wanted to create this idea of a city. So again, I'm not very concerned about the quality of the texturing. Sometimes it happens that I texture with very low res texture to have a base to paint over with, but some of the times I'm very interested mostly on the lighting, and so I render the shaded model, and that becomes the basis for what I have to do. So let's go back here and let's see what I did. Okay, so this is the beginning of the world that I'm gonna create, and it comes from a photograph that I took in Brittany, and it was, of course, it was not like this. It was definitely very, very foggy. I remember that the atmosphere was incredible. It felt like not being on Earth, but being something else. You will see that everything will change. But no matter what, I liked, it was not that blue. No, I have my first layer, I already have the graded version. Obviously it was not like this, but it was very foggy, so I graded it, so it looks already more nighttime. But it was a pretty interesting atmosphere, and that's why I decided to use this photo as a starting point, you know. And as you can see here, I then mix this with other photographs. And as I said in other tutorials, I take a lot of photographs. I come from photography and I love photography. And outside of loving photography as a goal, so the art of photography itself, I think is super important for a matte painter or a concept artist to create and to build a proper and a big library, so that we can go and pick images that we know we shot, that we know are not will not have problems of copyrights with. And so I think it's a very good habit. So if you're starting out, I think it's something that you should consider, also because, and it should be the first thing to say, photography teaches you a lot about lighting, it teaches you a lot about composition, and so it's part, in my opinion, of those fundamentals that you need if you want to create something, you know, if you want to become a good artist. I think someone who has a good eye. So let's proceed, and here I'm adding a little bit of details in the sky, in the far sky, that will have to be just hints of details. It cannot become distracting, because the scene and the main story will happen here, you know. So it's good to do at the beginning of a project, to do thumbnails, and so to understand and to narrow down the composition based on the story that you have to tell, because that's the area that deserves most attention, and all the rest is an addition, is something to add richness, but it cannot be distracting. And so we have to pay attention to this all the time. So here I'm adding the river that I will use in the foreground, and I will populate with boats and silhouette and details that you saw in the final image before. Again, here I'm playing with other skies that I took. I remember, you know, I was in Australia, and I had the chance to take pictures of this ridiculous storm approaching, you know, and so it's always important to gather information, to gather pictures, and to take your own pictures, so that you can create a library that, you know, will eventually will come useful. And it's good also because you will not have copyright problems. So continuing, I start, this is the city, some very small details in the back. Probably I haven't even used eventually because I wanted to give the idea of a city in the back, but it shouldn't have become like a metropolis, you know. It was supposed to be pretty, yeah, big, but not a New York City, you know. So here we have a look. I showed you that I went back to Maya and I created, you know, this set extension of the buildings, and then I use Maya, as you can see here from the preview from Arnold, to create some sort of a lighting, night lighting of the city, which cannot become too uh, important in the scene. Also because we're not talking about, you know, today and electricity and stuff. So I have to be. It has to be very subdued. And the main interest, the main area of lighting will be our area of interest here, close to the temple. So in the background, I just want to add hints of light. So I remember that I rendered some passes, as you can see here, but eventually decided that, you know, it was better not to use them, or just, you know, it's just nice with masks in Photoshop. You can just paint the lighting wherever you need it. But the render itself, it was too much for what I had to do, you know. But it's just, you know, always experience. You go, you do something, and try and error, you know, you make mistakes, and then you can go back. But the nice thing about going back to Photoshop and bringing everything in Photoshop is that we have a lot of flexibility. We can get rid of stuff, we can paint over them, we can do a lot of stuff, and of course everyone has his own way of working. Anyway, these are some of, as you can see, it's the same layer multiplied, and you know, flipped horizontally and maybe scaled. This becomes the base of my far city. Here, as you can see, I'm using hints of lighting here and there, and then I'm bringing back everything into the distance, into the fog. Okay, that was the back layer. We also have a layer in front. Let's see how I built this. So we have this. This is a higher res version of the city. I think the elements, the assets are the same. In the kit bash, in the assets that I used here, there are a lot of different models. But here, you know, I think I repeated most of them. I didn't need to go that far, also because that's the area that will be toned down. I mean, you will not see so much. You will need just to give the idea that there are buildings there, and, you know, this sort of towers and the statues. You create the contrast with the background and some sort of silhouette, and that's what is important, you know. You don't want people to start and then spend hours looking at what's exactly there, if it's realistic. It's just an idea. It's just a hint of something, buildings in this case, being there to enrich the story. So here I'm using some lights again, as I was doing before. So I had here, you see the full render, but I don't need that because it's distracting and it's not realistic, to be honest. It's probably not even realistic as it is right now, but it's okay. I mean, this is how I liked it, and no matter what, I toned the lights down. And then again, I put everything into fog. Sometimes for things like fog, atmospheric effect, I render some passes from 3D. Definitely the depth pass, but the Z depth, depending on your program. But most of the time I just paint. It's pretty simple, and, you know, it works. So here we go. Let's see here what I did. I think here we go. Now these lights make a little bit more sense. As you can see, this is important to mention. I'm working, probably also because I'm a matte painter, so I know what it means to deliver to a compositor something that doesn't have so much dynamic range, with, for example, blacks that are too crushed or overexposed images. It's something that maybe it's not that important in concept, but being a matte painter, you know, taught me how important it is to work with a wide range of values. So as you can see, the image is pretty flat, and I prefer to work this way because eventually I will grade it. Eventually I can go darker what I want. I can go, you know, I can overexpose what I need in case, but I have more material to work with. That's why you see the image as it is right now, and eventually it will go this dark. But this way allows me to have details everywhere, more or less. So if I decide that I want to show this area more than the other, I can do it. I can do that. Instead, if it's just crushed black, I cannot do anything with that. So anyway, here I took some pictures of pyramids. I had these pictures, and so I put them, and obviously to give the sense of distance, I painted this sort of fog and clouds in the lower part, so immediately this pushes the pyramids away far in the distance. And at the same time, you will see later in the final image that I like to have certain areas of contrast, so you see the darkness of the pyramids against some lighter area of the sky, and this creates more visual interest, right? Okay, so here I'm adding some glow, some halos from the light in the city. It's just, let's say, an artistic license. Realistically, we wouldn't see this, but it's nice to see in the back this kind of glows. Also because here we're talking, color-wise, there's this, orange against that is not even too saturated, so it's it blends, it better blends, it's more harmonious with these blues that are not even so saturated. And taking saturation out is a way to create more harmonious colors, even if they're complementary, so anyway, going on here, I am adding some smoke, always some ideas of life. You always have to ask questions. This is interesting also in our job. You have to ask questions and make things believable. So okay, the city, if I didn't put this kind of outside of the lights, if I didn't add this hints of life, it would be like someone could think, okay, it's desolated, there's no one living there. Instead, I want to give the impression that it's a lively city, even if it's early morning. Okay, so no matter what, I add this smokestacks in certain areas to sell this idea, to make it look more interesting. Again, maybe it's not correct, but as you can see, the color changes depending on what's in the background. I want to show this, I want to make it, no matter what, more visible, readable, so I create a dark silhouette against a bright background. So these kind of things. Of course, we should talk a lot about this, but these are the fundamentals. So you can find a ton of stuff in schools, a ton of stuff online about this, and it's the basis. So it's super important, but I'm not going to talk about these things, and there are much better teacher than me about these things, but you need to know them no matter what. So right now, if you see that I'm going too fast, obviously maybe this is not for a beginner, but I obviously we need to study and to know the basics of color, of composition, a way to communicate or design, a way to communicate ideas and tell stories through images. So right now it's just by making up this piece. So I'm sorry if I go fast on certain aspects that are super important. I'm not going fast because I don't think they're important. I'm going fast because I hope that you are already aware of those. Here I want to create distance, so on this rock I paint an extension for this rock, and I decide to add this statue that again is a detail of that pushes you, that makes you dive in this world of ancient Egypt. Then of course I always try to find here you will see, okay, there's always this node that I use. Holy shit, these are super bright. In any case, I often go black and white to check my values, which is super important. Values, even before colors, are important to create depth in the scene and to drive the attention, to drive your audience, to tell your story. So it's something that I do often. As often I flip the image, because after a while you get tired, and you get used to what you're seeing, what's in front of you, and you stop seeing the it's a Achilles heel for me, I think for everyone, but for me above all. That's why I always try, even when I work with clients, I always try to organize my schedule so that I have time, and in when I can say, okay, that's it for now, and I can spend a few hours away from the image and come back before delivering, for example, before doing the final grading, because I'm sure that coming back after a few hours of rest, of eye rest, I would spot something, sometimes even ridiculous, I have to admit. And so at least I have a little bit of time to go back and fix the problems. So again, black and white, often to check the values, flipping the image. So here, let's see what I do. Okay, adding details. Now we'll see that I'm gonna add the details like people, like stuff on the like boats and things. So here there's already a reflection of those elements of the lights in the river, and it's pretty simple. You just copy the image, you flip it vertically, and then you paint, and then maybe you add by painting these streaks of you distort the image and you add this kind of things to simulate that there is a water surface there. You can use the what's called liquify, distort image, but pay attention to these things, otherwise it wouldn't look water, it would look like pure metal, like chrome, and at the end of the day these small details will make the difference. Okay, let's go on. Oh, here, very simple. This comes from 3D. I found this very low res models of people, which I instanced and placed them here and there, and then for example I render only one pass and I duplicate. I don't care about the texturing here. Is this one? Yes, it is. I render without textures. I just render the silhouette, and then through clipping masks I go on top and I just quickly paint some colors here and there. They're so far no one will ever see them, but no matter what, our brain is our enemy, and if there's something wrong, maybe we don't understand what it is, but it will flag it. And so you need to be sure that you add some hints of something happening, so that our brain will, and the audience brain will buy the image. Here I render the temple. I render in 3D, I think from Maya directly or from View, like we saw here, and then I immediately I used the design, I used the layout, the positioning, but then I went and immediately paint on top of it to give much more realism. That's the power of 3D. The power of 3D is also the fact that you create a composition there. You can use it to have perspective for free, which is always important. But we don't have time. Okay, this is a personal project, could have taken how much I wanted, but even when you do personal project, try to put yourself in the situation of a real job, and so for a piece like this, it cannot take 1 month because you will never find a job, and I think I have to get much faster. But considering that I also use 3D, which has other advantages, no matter what, I think that a piece like this could take 2 to maximum 3 days, not even. And so by doing this personal project, always try to push yourself to be faster, because in our industry this is what's requested. Of course, quality, and then speed, because they want to see different iteration. Of course, my way of doing concept is a little bit different. It's not that painterly, it's not that fast, so for certain clients I wouldn't even seen as a potential candidate, because there are moments in which in production you need in a day 5 of 6 sketches very quickly to get down to narrow down the idea. This is more like an illustration, a style frame, a study of mood and lighting. Could be a marketing piece, let's say, but I think it has its place, you know, if I think about my clients. But at the same time, this can be even too detailed for something that is at the beginning stage. You know, they will never allow me 3 days for something like this unless this is a specific location. I don't know, in a sequence or for a game. I don't know, that requires this level. You know, so maybe I could have a little bit more time. And but again, like I was saying, I'm a matte painter, so I'm used to add details and richness and pay attention to realism to a certain extent. So right now I'm trying to bring that mentality and to bring it into the you know, the deadlines and the schedules of the concept world, you know, restriction of the concept world. And there's a long way to go for sure. Anyway, let's go back to this, adding details, painting elements like these banners, painting the fires in front of the temple. So right now I'm starting to, you start to understand even from the composition that the left area will be the area where everything will take place. And I had these fires because you know, people are gathering there for the ceremony, and so they need I like to drive the attention to a specific place, and people there need to I don't know, they're talking about what's happening. But here you go. I wanted to create with these fires area of gathering of people. Maybe this has a, I don't know, they're discussing about some issues, and so around these fires people could gather and discuss. And also you will see that I will add boats here with people coming from other places, and so you know, it makes sense that some fires are there to welcome people and to show them the entrance to the temple, something like this. Here using different details, different that I can take from pictures, that I can take from where I can paint. You know, when certain things or certain elements are so far away, you just need hints. That's why it's awesome to go back and study the great masters of painting, because or when you go to museums, to exhibitions, which is something that I always recommend to do, you see from the distance a painting and it looks so realistic, and then you get close and actually you see this rough brush strokes, but they're so perfectly painted, the right color temperature, the right color, the right value, that it works. And in theory, in what we do digitally, it's the same thing. You know, sometimes certain things could be hinted at, and if seen from a proper distance, they look okay, they look realistic. And if that's not the area that is the center of attention, why should I spend a long time trying to create and make something so realistic when no one will see it? But just the impression, just a hint, just the feeling of it, which is something that with mastery, with experience, you can create easily. Then it's all it takes. So here I'm adding other elements. I wanted this. I want to give importance to the entrance of this temple, the statues and stuff. Of course, there's a sort of lighting, so I have to paint the details on the wall and stuff. So let's see if I forgot something. Some glows and things. Again, I'm sorry I didn't record this while I was making it, but it's okay. Maybe it's still interesting and not too boring. Anyway, for it not to be too boring, let's proceed. So here I'm painting lighting paths, and then I'm going and paint light where I want. I wanted to give the idea that inside the temple there is something is happening. There is the other part of the ceremony. You know, there are other people gathered there. So I wanted to add this light inside. Photoshop. I mean, there are a lot of ways of doing things, as we all know, but it's useful to create two versions of the same asset, let's say, whatever it is, 3D, painted photos. You create two assets two versions based on the lighting. So let's say light on, light off, and then you painted the light where you want it. Of course, it has to make sense, it has to follow the geometry, blah, 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 but it's useless that I say this because you all know this. So extras, so here I sampled some people from photograph, I think, changed the color, added highlights. As you can see, it's the same thing replicated. Then I added some hints like they're holding candles or torches or something, you know, to create a little bit of variety. The variety is also given by the lighting that I'm applying. So closer to the fire, they are more lit, obviously, you know. So then I bring these things back a little bit in space. And let's see what I'm doing here. I don't know where I am. Oh, here you go. Other people. Same principle here. As you can see, the lighting follows what's happening there. The people gathering, discussing about what's happening, waiting for the people to arrive on boats. Let's see, we will see. I lost the boats, but I'll find them. Again, another thing, try to be, as you can see, I try to name folders and layers. Try to be organized for yourself, and above all, if you work in a team, when you deliver a PSD, let's make sure that whoever will take it will not get crazy. It happened to me in the past to spend more time trying to understand and to clean what someone else was doing, and not because it was wrong, but it's because everyone has his own way of working. But we work, you know, in teams, in a collaborative process, so we need to make their lives easier. You know, hopefully they will try to think the same way, and when we receive assets and material, everything will be named correctly and stuff. So maybe don't take this too much in consideration, even if I put names, but it's a good habit both for ourselves and for other people, for the team. So here I'm painting these people, the priest, the main priest, which is also, even scale wise, is slightly bigger, and the guards who protect him, and I try to implement to make it sit in the scene better, you know, by matching colors again and values as usual. As you can see here, now it's becoming the area of attention, and I change a little bit colors here. Okay, so here's the pass of reflection. Here we go. The boats are coming in. They're coming from 3D. As you can see, they're crude. They're, you know, they don't look that good. They don't have textures. Then I start again. Same thing. Values first, and with the value already, you place them in distance. Then definitely the reflections will make them sit where they're supposed to be. I paint the people on them, and let's see what I do here. Oh, here I have details like the camos in this corner. Again, photos I took. Always take your photos so that you can do whatever you want with them, and you will know they're high res. And then details like a flock of birds there in the distance, give a little bit of life. Here I painted it's always nice to create distance by creating a very clear foreground, midground and background. So here I felt that I needed something also composition wise to frame the area of attention. And as you can see, there's also the shape of the rock itself makes you go with your eye towards the entrance of the temple, more or less, and the pyramid is put here because, again, it moves you there, it moves your eye there. The statues, you can see they're not the same height, they go down. So this is, again, composition is something that's super important, super interesting, always worth going back to and study and try to be better at. Here, okay, I painted this this guy in the foreground, looking at what's happening there, you know, a sign of life. If it was a rock, I felt it was a little bit too crude, too not so interesting, let's say. And again, here a hint of something happening inside, like there's a cave inside the statue, which I gave, yeah, it's a half rock, half statue, a statue built on top of a rock. I had this idea of giving this man face, just hints, not too much detail there. And oh wow, this is the final image. Now maybe this is, I don't know why it's here, it's maybe some 3D test. As you can see, you go from here to something like this. So I mean, it's good. I mean, there's a lot of potential in these tools. You can do whatever you want. Of course, having a clear idea in mind at the beginning, even if it's a personal project, and sometimes it's also good to start and to combine things without a precise goal in mind. At the same time, as we were saying before, taking this as a sort of an exercise for a potential client environment, you know, paid project environment is a good habit. So the clearer the idea you have, the better it will be, you know, the less waste of time you will encounter. I forgot to add, to say that as you can see, I added some other people there in this kind of a huge balcony. So eventually I go, like we were saying before, big range, you know, value, and I can do whatever I want. Of course, right, like this is super flat. So I go and I do a little bit of a color correction, of color grading, to make the image more contrasted, to make it more interesting. I use masks so that I go and I know that I go and I darken or lighten the areas that I need. So this, you know, when everything is finished, in this case, for example, I would take a few hours, say ciao to my image, and come back a little bit later, paint some more details, paint out others, fix a few things. Here I go very dark, but this is also part of this step in which, again, what do I want to tell? I'm sorry. Where do I want to lead the eye of the audience? So through masks, I decide, of course, that this area is the most important for me. So I go and I decide to, you know, to give it more visual space in the sense that it's lighter, and so immediately it's the area of most contrast, and so immediately we go there. And eventually I do a little bit of grading, a little bit of a final color correction, which sometimes a little bit of chromatic aberration, try to understand how a lens work, a little bit of glow and halo in the far background, which is something not that realistic. It's something though that I like, and so it's something that I tend to use. And eventually this is the final piece with hopefully details and visual interest where it needs to be, and no matter what, some richness overall, to sell the idea that this is a world that you, I don't know, love to live in, to love to go back to, and that is full of mystery and full of adventure, let's say. And on this romantic note, I hope you enjoyed this little breakdown, and I hope it will be interesting, and hopefully we'll talk soon. Maybe I will do something else soon, and hope you have a great day, guys. Take care.